Lesson 81, treches. So in this lesson, we're learning the second person singular form of our new verb, trecho, which means to run. And so now you can say, I run, and you can also say, you run. So I run is trecho, you run is treches.
And this is a pretty big step for our listeners because the forms of a me, those are what's called irregular in that they don't conform to the pattern that most Greek verbs do. Whereas trecho, that's what's called a relatively regular verb, i.e. it conforms to the pattern of endings that most Greek verbs conform to in the present. And so our listeners are learning not only the forms of trecho, but also the types of endings that will be useful for many verbs in the future.
So the forms that we're looking at here of trecho, these forms are comprised of 2 or 3 parts. And for simplicity's sake, the way we present these to students is we say we have what's called a stem, and then we have what's called a personal ending. The tau, rho, epsilon, chi part of the word, trech, that's what we call the stem, and then epsilon, iota, sigma, ace, that part of the word is what we call the personal ending. So the second person singular form, treches, for simplicity's sake, we say it's divided into 2 parts, the stem and the ending.
Right.
And so what we're going to see as we go along through the next few lessons, and as we learn the third person singular, the first person plural, blah, 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 as we do that, we're going to see that the stem stays the same and the ending will change. And so that ending will give us the different meanings of who is doing the action. But in the meantime, we just have these 2 forms. We have trecho, which means I run or I am running, and then treches, which means you run or you are running. So we want the reader to slowly get accustomed to these verb forms. And so with that in mind, let's look at a couple of exercises. In number 1, we just have treches. And Catherine, you know, in Greek, you can have just one word that makes a complete sentence by itself, right?
Right, because as we've said before, we don't need any pronoun because the pronoun is embedded in the verb. And so treches is a complete sentence. You are running or you run.
But we can add the pronoun in if we want to emphasize the subject of the sentence, as in number 2, treches su. Here we have the pronoun, you, along with the verb. So that means you run or you are running, but perhaps with more emphasis communicated by the pronoun su.
And then in exercise 3, we get practice with the new spelling variation of uk. U treches, you are not running or you do not run.
That's right. Instead of uk, we have the spelling u because the next word starts with a consonant. So as we go forward, we're going to be filling in our chart here. We're going to learn more and more forms of the verb trecho. And as we go along, we'll also point out how the stems and the personal endings work together.